Now joined by Josh Lipsky, the Director of Global Business and Economics at the Atlantic Council. So Josh, China is saying that the ban on Tyson imports is related to coronavirus fears, but how true is that in your opinion?
Well, thanks for having me. I think it's partially true. And here's how we know. First of all, they are concerned about meat and seafood imports from all over the world. And we can see that if we look at what they're doing, not just with the US, but with Germany and the UK. But there's another factor here. You know, a week ago, there was an outbreak at their open market in Beijing that was allegedly based on what was coming in from imported salmon. The scientists and doctors will tell you that's very unlikely. So what China's doing here is basically communicating to their internal audience, telling them that the disease is coming from the outside. And that fits with their broader propaganda efforts. But it doesn't mean that they haven't raised a warning signal about how global trade is going to work in the age of coronavirus.
Right.
And if countries one off can say, we don't agree that this shipment is clean, we're going to have a real global trade and global food problem. And that's why the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization really need to collaborate and figure out some international standards here. And if countries don't agree with it, they can say that. But the system as it is not working.
Interesting. All right. So I'd like to talk a little bit about, phase one of the U.S.-China trade deal. What are the latest developments there, and how did the coronavirus specifically affect output?
Right. It's a great question. So the phase one of the trade deal is in relatively stable hands. I say relatively stable because last night, President Trump's trade advisor, Peter Navarro, said that the deal was off, and then the White House quickly scrambled to correct that statement. So the trade one, the phase one is still on. It's still moving forward as planned, and I think that will hold through the election. Obviously, President Trump has said it's critically important to him, and he will hold on to it at all costs. But global trade is suffering. It's in a fragile situation. Coronavirus shocked the global trading system. Global trade output is down probably somewhere between 20 and 25% in the second quarter. That's the biggest drop since the Great Depression. So this is a major factor going on in global trade. And anything that we see that shocks a fragile system, like what China did this week with chicken, can shatter the entire system. And that's the risk here.
Right. Could it be that China is attempting to sidestep this deal? Could we see a trade war down the line?
Well, I would never rule out the potential for a trade war down the line. I think what's happening with the chicken isn't a sign of China trying to get out of their commitments to the phase one deal. But we should recognize that China's falling far short of their commitments. They're probably on track right now to just make about 40% of what they've agreed in the phase one deal through 2020. So they will fall short. What excuses they use remain to be seen. Coronavirus is a legitimate one, so we have to recognize that changed the game for everyone. Could there be a trade war down the line? Yes. Do I predict one before the election? No.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Very interesting insight into this issue. We're going to have you come back on again because this is something that we're constantly talking about in the office.